Hi, everyone. Welcome to Maddie's Community Conversations. I'm one of your hosts, Sheila Kukan, and I hope you're having a wonderful Valentine's week. I am wearing a shirt with my Valentine on it, so hope you have lots of love all around this week. And I am really excited to welcome back Kayla Wade as my co-host for February. Kayla joined the Humane Society of Charlotte in October 2020 and currently has the position of Assistant Shelter Operations Manager, as well as being the co-chair of HSC's DEI Committee. Kayla has always dreamed of being able to help strengthen the bond between pet and owner by providing behavioral assistance to those in need, keeping pets in loving homes. Kayla's interest in animal welfare first started when she began studying canine behavior at Catch Canine Trainers Academy, which she graduated from in January of 2023, earning the CCDT title. She also began hands-on work by volunteering at York County Animal Control, assisting with their weekly playgroup and assessing shelter dogs for adoption placement. Since then, Kayla has filled her extracurricular time with continuing her education with the latest canine and feline studies, fostering shelter dogs and cats, and growing the behavior and training program at the Humane Society of Charlotte. Today, Kayla's role primarily consists of creating and implementing behavior modification and enrichment plans for shelter dogs to increase their adoptability, lower their length of stay, and reduce kennel stress. She also provides low-cost counseling services for people who have pets with behavioral challenges and hosts volunteer-led shelter dog training classes. Please join me in welcoming Kayla and her adorable cat, Murphy.
Hi, thanks for having me again. Here's Murphy. I always have to show her. She's happy to be here just as much as I am. So I would love to go ahead and jump right in with our question of the day. So today we're going to ask you all, what is the best surprise you've received? I'll give you a second to think about that and I'll go ahead and tell you my story. So one time I was shopping at a consignment store, which is basically a gently used clothing store. And I was shopping around for pants. And as I was trying on some pants, I found a $20 bill in one of the pockets. And, which may not be like my ultimate best surprise ever in the world, but it was the first one that I thought of when I thought of this question. And I think it's kind of a universal thing, when you pull out your winter clothes from storage and you look in the pockets and then you find like a $5 bill. And it's just such a good feeling. So pop in the chat if you can relate to that experience, please. So I'm not the only one, but that was a really good surprise and kind of helped pay for those sweatpants that I got later on. So, alrighty.
Thanks, Kayla. Sorry, I'm having a technical moment. One sec. I guess that's my best surprise. I'll be right back.
All good. I can go ahead and answer or read a couple answers
Everyone
from
else
the
has been
chat as
counted.
well. Let's see.
I didn't mention
Let's
names.
see. My mom adopted a cat as a surprise. I was so happy. Jennifer says best surprise was my son. Oh, that's so nice. Alrighty. Stacy says I was picking up trash in the neighborhood, found a $50 bill in the grass. Wow. This puts my $20 sweatpants to shame there. $5 in my jacket pocket from the previous winter. It's just like a universal thing. We just leave the money and then it's just a nice little gift for us later. Finding a good item in a thrift store. I'm also a big thrifty girl, so I can relate to that as well.
I
All right.
also love these ones about babies. My best surprise is probably when my sister let me know she was having my niece. So I love this. This is kind of a universal theme today. Money and babies.
Two greatest choice.
Well, thank you all. Please keep these nice surprises coming in the chat. Oh, a 7.1 earthquake. That's a great surprise. But yes, please keep it coming. And I'll welcome my colleague Amber Eby to announce our January grant giveaways.
Hi, everyone, and happy early Valentine's Day. Thank you all for joining us on this Monday. And I have my Valentine, Dolly, here. She'd be in camera shy, but she is excited to announce the winners for January with y'all. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And just a minute. Okay, excellent. So we have our January 2026 prize winners, first prizes of this calendar year. And we're going to kick it off with four community conversation winners of 2,500. And those winners are Cindy from Lakeshore Humane Society in Wisconsin, Haley from Cloister Animal Welfare Society in New Jersey, Jessica from Astoria Cat Rescue in Queens, and Mackenzie from New Life Rescue and Adoption in Indiana. And as you can see, these folks watched live and on demand, so you can too. Irene, my colleague, is going to drop the link in the chat so you make sure you're registered for great prizes when you join us every week. But there's more. We also have our Maddie's Pet for a monthly giveaway of $3,000. And that is going to Sarah from Kansas Humane Society in Kansas. And wait, one more special surprise for our sweethearts on the call. It is our 30th anniversary $1,000 giveaway. And that is going to Cassandra from Dallas Animal Services in Texas. Congratulations to all our winners. If you are on the call, please say hi in the chat. Let us know your elevator speech, a little about your organization, and how you plan to spend the funds. Thank you, everyone. And Dolly and I, there goes her head, hope you have a great week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Amber and Dolly, and congratulations to all of the winners. And please now, if anyone has any national updates, go ahead and drop those in the chat as well. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get started with our presentation today.
Alrighty. So I'm going to go ahead and announce our lovely speaker of the day. Today we are joined by Lawrence Minnis, graduate student at George Mason University. Lawrence Minnis is an animal well professional, researcher, and organizational leader focused on decision-making, behavior, and systems design in animal welfare. He holds a master's degree in psychology with a specialization in behavioral neuroscience and animal cognition and is currently completing his doctoral dissertation on pet adoption decision-making. His work centers on understanding how uncertainty, information processing, and behavioral responses shape adoption outcomes for animals and families. Lawrence brings applied experience to his research, having served in human resources and learning and development shelter leadership roles, where he led workforce development, organizational training initiatives, and personnel management. His background also includes military service as an Army officer. Through his research, leadership experience, and applied behavioral lens, Lawrence works at the intersection of animal welfare practice, organizational behavior, and decision neuroscience, helping organizations better understand how human behavior influences outcomes for animals, teams, and communities. So please join me in welcoming Lawrence. I'm a big behavior head, obviously, so I'm super excited to hear his presentation as well. And I love to geek out in science, so I'm super excited to tune in and hear what you got to say.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Glad to be back. It's been a while since I've been able to speak, but look forward to this. So I'm glad to have everyone here, and we'll just sort of dive right in. Excuse me. So we're going to be talking a lot today about uncertainty and just how we manage uncertainty. It's not just how we actively think we're doing it, but also how we can see it in some things that shelters and rescues actually do, and also how we see it in the community. I think this is important. I really wanted to bring this to the audience because it drives a lot of what we end up doing and the systems that we put in place, both in our communities and in our organizations. But I don't think we really have great discussions in detail about how or why we're addressing the uncertainty and the impacts of why we're doing it in a certain way. So I wanted to lean in a bit, discuss it, lay the groundwork for everyone to leave here today and start to have those type of discussions in your communities, in your organizations, so we can address some of the things that may have hindered us over the past handful of years. So as Kayla already gave a bit of my background, I've spent the last almost 10 years in neuroscience, which is also I would add that as another one of my surprises. I didn't know I would be such an enthusiast for neuroscience, especially in high school. I try to stay away from any complicated science itself. But then years later, to ultimately dive into grad school of all things, and going into psychology and the cognitive and behavioral neuroscience, it was a surprise how much I liked it, well, actually loved it, and been inspired by it. So I want to make sure we begin today with a baseline understanding of some of the language that you may hear. The first two, uncertainty and risk, we commonly just conflate and use interchangeably, but they have different definitions and different meanings, and that's going to be key for some of our discussion today. Uh, Uncertainty in itself is having a lack of information, but not being able to even predict or have an idea of the probabilities that something is going to happen. It's really just having a dark cloud of not knowing and not being able to predict, and still trying to tend to an action or an environment in which we have no real knowledge. Where risk, there are some, there is an understanding. We have some knowledge about a probability or a likelihood of something happening. So when you hear those two, and I say uncertainty, that means the unknown. It's ambiguous. Where risk, we have some likelihood that goes with it. Heuristics. That's another word you hear quite frequently. If you listen to my other Maddie's Call from a couple of years ago, you would hear me say it a couple dozen times as well. It's also, I believe, one of Irene's favorite words from that call. But it's something that we do constantly as a mental shortcut. And that's the way that you can reference it when you hear heuristics, a simple rule of thumb to help us navigate the thought process through everything. And the next word, schema, you can think schematics, layout, or framework. So the schema is literally the way our brain organizes things, how we mentally organize or reference or lay out how we, look at the world, how we perceive the world, and how we interpret any of the information that we get. And aversion. When you hear aversion, a lot of you may already be familiar with it, but just if you're not, it is a strong motivational behavior to avoid something. So when you hear averse or aversion, it means you're trying to really, really strongly to avoid something. And so those terms are going to be mixed in throughout the discussion. But I wanted to at least present them. So if you were unfamiliar and hadn't been in neuroscience, at least one thing you'll be able to take away from this is knowing what heuristics or schema, the definitions for those. So I wanted to give something that has been on my mind for years. Uncertainty is probably the biggest barrier that organizations face. I mean, uncertainty is sort of this ambiguous cloud that animal welfare organizations, probably more so than a lot of other industries, have to navigate. And it's almost continuous. And I think just by the design of animal welfare, of rescues and shelters, we have to navigate it. When there is no escape from uncertainty, you're sort of nested in it, and you have to find ways to deal with it and operate through it. And essentially, we end up trying to take things from an uncertain state and try to figure out information, try to gain information that we can then transmit forward to make things a little bit less uncertain. So that in itself means that we're constantly facing something that humans typically avoid. Animals deal with it as well. we see the impact, and we've heard a lot of speakers coming here at conferences, blog posts online about the impact of the uncertainty, the nervousness, the reaction of the uncertain environment in a shelter, and how that impacts animals and their health. So the animals that we're dealing with, when they face uncertainty on a constant basis, staff members uncertainty on their life from their personal side, when they're dealing with the animals every day, their communities, like it's so much that we cannot readily predict, that we try to anticipate but don't do a great job of predicting. That means we're really nested in uncertainties on uncertainty. Families, the potential adopters that come into our rescues and shelters that are looking online, they're also navigating uncertainty. And it is one of the key things that drives a lot of the behaviors that we see when people are looking to adopt. And I won't go into a ton of detail unless until a little bit later on about how we can address that type of uncertainty. But ultimately, we see a lot of choices, a lot of decisions being made by even our adopters, because it turns into more of a risk where there are probabilities that they're anticipating for them to be able to avoid uncertainties and that unknown. And we should work on developing and improving our systems to make sure we can help families through in order to improve adoption rates for all of our animals. We're going to have to really focus on how we tend to the uncertainties that they face. And we're going to have to understand what uncertainties they face. And I'll put a pin in that one because that's also my dissertation and some of the future work that I'll be doing. Our funders, the donors, they're uncertain about where their money is going, so they usually are giving funds and anticipation that it's going to go towards things that they can, are tangible, or are they can. There's some type of key indicator that their money is being impactful and being used well. But I think that uncertainty also hinders money being able to use to advance things that it may be innovative, but because it's tied to uncertainty, we don't, it doesn't get funded. Housing, our communities, uncertainty is huge. I think the underlying uncertainty is what drives a lot of the landlords in the areas, a lot of the housing developments, a lot of legislation that comes within from our local communities to put barriers in place that ultimately limit how many dogs are allowed in communities or in apartment buildings or in homes. And by those limitations, because of that uncertainty, we have to continue to push and fight just to be able to open up homes for dogs that wouldn't be a problem, that would be better in that home with a family that loves them and takes care of them, than just in a shelter day in and day out. So again, uncertainty is a huge barrier across the board. And that's why, again, it's something that we need to be able to recognize both as an individual, but as organizations, and try to tend to that uncertainty. So organizations, much like people, tend to be averse to uncertainty and averse to loss. And those two things make it a challenge to be able to progress or to innovate and make change. We face uncertainty near daily, but again, that juxtaposition, that dissonance means any organization that is in animal welfare is also almost daily combating itself, because we don't know the future. We're trying to find the things that may be predictable. And sometimes you have to take that blind step, and organizations, much like people, may be hesitant to take that blind step not knowing what's going to come once they take that step. There is that friction, that change that we may encounter when we go through change that may outweigh the frictions that we have with our current issues. And it's because with our current issues, we know that there are issues. We recognize them. We're already attempting to deal with them. So we know the risks, but there is a knowledge about it that still keeps us trusting that we can handle it versus what may come with uncertainty. The loss that may be perceived is that comes along with uncertainty may also be perceived as cascading. And what that means is for instance, if an organization changes and says they're going to change the way that they do adoptions. Well, the thought process may be if we make these changes and the adoptions don't increase, then one, you're losing the adopters who may you losing not only the adoptions and their what you would normally have if you just continue going, but by losing adoptions, it will cascade to losing funding because your numbers aren't going up. Therefore, the donors aren't going to put money into organization where the operations aren't going to increase adoptions, where it's not being used well. And if the donors aren't coming in, the organization is in jeopardy of shutting down. So that's that one change, or making that one change, is sort of hampered by the fact that you're looking at those losses cascading. And it's a perception. It might not actually happen, but it's the perception of it cascade that can, again, cause that friction and keep us as stagnant and in a place where we're comfortable, even though we're still dealing with issues that we would wish to do better with. So uncertainty is a perceived threat. We can respond in that way, and we can put systems up just so we can handle those things. And we look for progress. Understand that early progress is going to be seen through a lens of aversion to uncertainty. So the hiccups or the friction, the pain points that we engage with early during any change is always going to be compared to the pain points that we had previously with things that we knew about. So, but that's where we're going to have to, as organizations, have conversations about how we want to navigate that uncertainty and how we can build vigilance to move forward. The difficulty of change is, again, I'm pretty sure a number of us, almost everyone here, has undergone that within the past 5 or 6 years. COVID was a massive one where everyone had to change, everyone had to adapt. But since then, I'm pretty sure everyone's organization has had at least one significant change that they had to go through, that there was a bit of hesitation to undergo that pursuit because there was uncertainty that was tied to it. While those pain points, again, that you were undergoing, the issues prompting that change were known, there was probably a little bit of back and forth, a little bit of conflict on whether you commit and move forward with this change and going in a different direction, or whether there's some other way to tolerate where you currently were. And hopefully everyone here was able to progress through that uncertainty and get to a better place. But if not, then again, hopefully after this call, you'll be able to start the discussion and get you moving in that direction of progress and change. Change management, I'm pretty sure it's been a big conversation that everyone has been involved with recently. But again, it's that perception of loss, that perception of friction, that things aren't going to get better with this change, that sows doubt, it sows misalignment. So again, if your organizations are going through that and going through some type of change, or even strategizing and creating plans for some type of change, and you're seeing uh, some doubts kick up or some pushback on that, just understand where it's nested. And it's nested in the uncertainty that once things move in that direction, we don't know what's going to be coming. Can't predict whether it's going to be completely successful or what the pain points are going to be. But the best way to address it is to make sure that you have systems in place that will deal directly with the uncertainties. And I think that's one of the main issues that we encounter when we are going through such changes. It will have the systems to put in place for departments that need to change, or personnel, or jobs, or whatever it is that may need to change. But within those systems, we don't have something to address the uncertainties that pop up. And understand that uncertainty is processed at a local level, it's localized. So, as organizations, you may have leadership that are ready to move forward, but you'll have teams, you'll have departments, you'll have a couple of individuals that are a little bit hesitant because we all are averse to uncertainty at different levels. So we should have support systems. We should have support within our systems to tend to those localized teams, and not just saying everyone needs to get on board with what the whole organization is doing and get used to it and move forward. Make sure that support system is localized and make sure it's there within the systems that's created so you can actually advance forward. The last thing before we get to, the last two things were, I want everyone to be able to leave from here and prepare themselves, prepare their organizations for having some type of internal discussion, because that's where it's going to start first is one, acknowledging where the uncertainties, where the pain points are, and getting an idea of how much tolerance everyone has with uncertainty, how much tolerance everyone has with dealing with things as they're going to be happening when you're moving forward. So you have to have that internal discussion, and within those internal discussions, there are a couple of things I want everyone to be aware of when they're happening. So again, create your systems to include these discussions, identify the uncertainties, and then acknowledge the current pain points and then future pain points. So where there could be future pain points, because that transition is going to be new. Almost everything new is going to have a new pain point, and everyone has to be on board with understanding that we're going to be dealing with the pain points of the past and of the future. So we're going to feel that it's not progressing or it's not working, that change was just change for the sake of change and not for the benefit of an outcome. But understand that as we push through, as we get everyone on board to move forward, they'll get better at navigating those pain points of that change, of that new. And they'll also be getting further away from the pain points of before. And so that will help create that momentum to keep things moving forward. But it's always that trudge when you first start and get everything moving, that just to get everybody on board, it may seem difficult, but understand it's difficult because of uncertainty. And if we can directly address the uncertainty, we can then tend to exactly what's going to help us move forward along with the actual plans that we have in place. In these discussions, I want you to try to be aware of the use of either value-based terms or emotional terms and the over-reliance on those terms. And what I mean by that is, if we're in a discussion and we're talking about things we're uncertain about and the plans for the future, and every statement or every comment or feedback starts with I feel or I believe or I think, then even the I think may be more emotion based than the than like they're analyzing. And if we are having an overabundance or over reliance on how we think or feel, we may be putting ourselves into a bit of conflict because values and even emotions can be comparative. This is something that I tried to explore in a number of conversations in my time with the shelter. Is that we want to be value based, we want to be aligned, but if we're comparative with values, and if we rest just on that, the problem becomes my values or the organization's values compared to your values, and if they don't align, then we create conflict, and we're always looking at it as I value, you don't, organization values, but then doesn't do this. And while there is misalignment there, you want to uphold those values, or you want to uphold your validate how you're feeling. It's relying on that too much can just put you through a lens of conflict where everyone else is either similar or other. And again, having that juxtaposition, that conflict is where you want to try and bring everyone together to be on that same page and to navigate that any potential conflict. And I think that's where, again, organizations, if you've had issues and for years of tab, conflict resolution is one of the things that need to happen or need to be trained and developed within your organization. Again, that's something that you need to be aware of is you may be relying a lot on emotions or values in the face of uncertainty. And if you haven't acknowledged that uncertainty, you're just continuing that same cycle of running into problems and running into conflict instead of resolving it. The ways that through the conversations, we want to build two things: organizational resilience and vigilance, and tending to or pushing through those difficult times. By doing that, we're actually able to progress forward and recognize that things may not be exactly what we want it to be to start or even at our midpoint, but it doesn't mean that we stop or we just retreat and go back to what we were doing before. Resilience, another key word that pops up a lot online, and probably a lot at conferences. Hiring a bunch of resilient individuals doesn't make the organization resilient automatically. The organizational resilience needs to be built, it needs to be cultivated, and the best organizations that demonstrate resilience have it baked into their systems. So again, when your systems need to address uncertainty, they also need to support the resilience of your teams, the resilience of everyone moving forward, and being vigilant and pressing through uncertainty and accepting that there will be failures, there will be pain points, but that's just a part of the experience. Ultimately, we want to be able to address uncertainty by innovating, understanding that each stakeholder, again, has uncertainty, and that if we can have a conversation with them to identify their uncertainties and look to innovate to improve how they are responding to them, then we start to open up a lot of pathways forward. One of them is being able to engage, as in the example that I gave before, being able to engage landlords and business or residential properties about their uncertainties when it comes to pets. And by engaging with them, the biggest uncertainty is they don't know the status of pets, so they don't know what damage can be caused, and they don't want to come out of pocket for this, and they don't want to have insurances charged extra for that. And so again, that uncertainty is driving a lot of the barriers that they put in place. But that means we can look to innovate and see what are ways that we can improve their ability to be more certain or to be more tolerant to what we're asking. Um, Canine Good Citizen is one of those innovations because it says, hey, these animals that have this title have been tested and behave in a certain way. But we can probably look to see how we can innovate that and advance that specific to housing developments. So again, we can, in these internal discussions, while we're addressing uncertainty, we can look to see what type of innovation we can also implement. And for donors and funders, this is an opportunity to get behind some of that innovation. If you have organizations that explain where their uncertainties are and how they're trying to tend to them, maybe we can actually fund and support the uncertainties, not in just the indicators, the performance indicators that are traditional to funding. Ultimately, we want to start that process, have those conversations so we can make a few dents into that wall of uncertainty. That gives us a path forward. And if we're able to do that, that opens up the world for us because that means we are not going to be stuck in the same rut. We're not going to feel like we're constantly dealing with these same issues over and over again and just griping about the things that we should be doing better or wondering why we're not doing better, why we're not making these changes. We can have conversations, center them around the same pain point that everyone undergoes. Again, animals deal with uncertainty. Our community members, our co-workers, everyone, organizations deal with the uncertainty. So if we can all discuss the uncertainty and understand, that gives us a path to empathize with one another, to empathize with those that we may have conflict with. Then, again, that creates the path for us to be able to move forward. Right? So that's the end of my spiel about uncertainty. What I wanted to do is be able to have a conversation about that. It's not just a lecture or presentation about it. I wanted to be able to engage everyone. But you also, if you wanted to follow up with me, you can keep track, connect with me on Facebook, on Instagram, as well as on LinkedIn. And we'll bring this up at the end, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Lawrence, for sharing all that. I learned 2 new words, something new within the first 5 minutes of the presentation. So I didn't know I was going to learn something that fast, but I'm adding heuristic and schema.
Schema. Yep.
Schema. Thank you for, I don't embarrass myself later. Adding that to my vocabulary now. That was a great presentation. I think something that kept coming to my mind is a metaphor of, getting caught in a riptide or quicksand. It's tempting to fight against it. Same with change when you're not used to it. But the best way to overcome it is to lean into it. And that opens up a world of possibilities for you. So, in animal welfare, where we kind of have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis, it's best to stay open-minded and, lean into the change because that kind of is the only way that we can grow.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And it's difficult because even when we recognize it and want to lean in and flow with the tide, there's this natural instinct to fight against it. Again, with uncertainty, we have an innate aversion to it. Loss, we have an innate aversion to it. We think in those certain ways. So there's a wonderful experiment for uncertainty and for loss where you're given 2 boxes or 2 envelopes, and you're told for certain there's $100 in one, and that in the other there could be $0, there could be $1,000, and you're given the option which one you're going to choose. Now, Kayla, Sheila, which one would you choose?
I would choose the one I know. I would choose the one I
would
know.
choose the other one, but I'm curious what most people think.
Yeah. And Kelly, you said you choose what you know, and you probably also feel like if you didn't choose it and you got the other box and it had $1 in it, that you would have lost $99. But that reference, that schema it throws us off because you started with nothing. So you got $1 more than you had, or you got $100 more than you had, but you had a chance to get 900 or 150 or more with that box. But having that choice, having that opportunity to choose in the unknown where you can't really predict and say what it's going to be makes us scared and say, oh, wait, I'll go with what I'm comfortable with because I know I have it and I don't want to lose it. I know I have it for certain. And so that's how, again, no matter our intent, we're going to innately have that feeling, but we want to be able to recognize it and recognize when others are going through it and be able to support each other so we can navigate it.
Wow. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like the Deal or No Deal game show where people just
Yeah.
kind of keep going. I'm like, just take the money. But you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, you still end up winning, so might as well go for something that can really improve.
Yeah.
I have a question for you as well. So I was wondering for you, what is an example of what localized support looks like when organizations have to make adjustments and changes? So you kind of talked about it shouldn't just come from, the top and kind of be this overarching um, announcement, but it should kind of you should have some localized support within your own organization. Do you
Yeah.
mean kind of like within departments or within kind of like specific groups? Kind of what does that look like?
Well, it's whether it's departments or specific groups is going to be based on sort of the makeup of the organization itself. Most change is going to be, directed and led by the top. And I've seen the good and bad, both in the military and in other organizations, where change is started and an order is just given that everybody just needs to get on board. That support needs to be sure to go through the different departments or the different teams or whatever the makeup is, because there's going to be there are different pain points. There are different environments that everyone operates in. And so their uncertainty is going to be seen through the lens of that local team or that local department. And we want to make sure the support is going to be set to be best suited for that team to allow them to move forward. So that means, yeah, if you are a leader or if you are a director, a senior leader in an organization, set the trajectory for the organization, but try to have focus groups, try to have conversations where people can voice what they're uncomfortable with, but understand that these conversations are going to be two-way where they can express, and it's not just, hey, do because we're doing it, that you can say, okay, I register this is what you're uncomfortable with, but that discomfort, that those feelings are nested somewhere. They have what I'll say is a locus, but and that's LUOCUS, not ST. But that locus means origin. It has a point where it's tied to. So that discussion can then turn to, okay, well, why do you feel like this? I know you've vocalized that you feel a certain way, but let's find where that is situated and let's try to address that point of where it's situated. So if we address where it's nested and are able to alleviate that pain point for you, then this should remove a barrier for you to move forward. And by having that localized to departments, to teams, to some key contributors, some key stakeholders, then that should remove the barriers for the whole entire organization moving forward.
Awesome. Yeah, I loved how you spoke on how it's a two-way conversation, and that way
Mm.
someone doesn't feel like you're just kind of being forced to move with it, but that you're actually, in a way, a part of the decision. Even if you're not directly involved with the decision-making process, you're still a part of that change. And I think people just want to feel heard and
Yeah.
not feel that they're just kind of having to go along with it.
Yeah. And they also are pointing out pain points, maybe pointing out pain points that will also pop up that aren't being addressed with the change. So they'll also pop up in the future with whatever transformation or whatever change happens. And they may be viable pain points that need to be addressed. And you can say, okay, we recognize that and we can look to address it here while we are also doing some of these other things. But we still shouldn't use that as a way to impede any progress that we make.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's see, I think you kind of answered some of these questions, but from Lori, I'm interested in your thoughts about funders tending to support standard performance indicators and that we need to think about getting them to support projects that address uncertainty. We are a private brick and mortar rescue and sanctuary, just for some context. Can you please talk a little bit more about this type of transition? So kind of going more into that donor side of things.
Yeah. And again, this type of presentation would go well just being directed at an audience of funders and donors as well, because we kind of gloss over uncertainty and don't register how vast an impact it has, the environments that it operates, and then how we react to it. And again, in this industry, that's all we face. I've thought of few other organizations, few other industries where there is just a top-down constant stream of uncertainty that you can't escape from. And so we have to have the conversation and say, this is so important that it's tending to not just this one indicator or this one thing that we can hang our hat up and say we've achieved, but in order to make this organization overall better, in order to make this team better, in order to do better for the animals or for our communities, we have to erase or address this barrier of uncertainty. And the best way, once you have that conversation, is to be able to uh, clearly and concisely describe, identify what it is. Because if they understand it, then they can sort of digest what is going to be happening, and understand why there's no immediate, discrete indicator of performance that is tied to it. But if things get better, then they should see it in some of these other outcomes. And so that way, we're having the conversation, and that uncertainty, those abstract concepts, those abstract signs of progression can also be counted, as well as, or in addition to, some of those hard standard KPIs that are used.
Awesome. I love that very tangible advice. Just send them this presentation. Send them the link. I'll do the work for you. Don't gotta worry about it. All right. Well, thank you, Lawrence, so much for this discussion. And thank you, audience, for being here and tagging along in the conversation as well. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Our panelists, Lawrence, will be available on Maddie's Pet Forum throughout the week to continue the discussion. So if your question wasn't directly answered or covered, you can go ahead and hop on there and you can kind of answer it there. Allison will drop the link in the chat. And let's continue this conversation on Maddie's Pet Forum with a reflection question. So, how do you currently face uncertainty? And what is your uncertainty tolerance for changing to improve? It's a great question. All right, and I think that's it
Great
for me.
question. Yes, thank you so much, Lawrence. This was a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Kayla. Always amazing hosting with you and looking forward to being back for the last week of February. Folks, next week we will not have a call in observance of President's Day, but we'll be back on February 23rd with a conversation with the team from Stray Cat Alliance on safe at home, engaging communities. So definitely join us then. And otherwise, if you would like to host or speak or are interested in sharing some suggestions for Maddie's Pet Forum, go ahead and let us know in the chat. But truly, thank you so much, Lawrence and Kayla, for a great call. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.